Don't be mad, be glad. Be glad that this week we're going to break down the latest MAD landscape. What does MAD stand for? Machine learning, artificial intelligence, and data. This year's landscape was published with great insights from my good friend and fellow Frenchman, Matt Turk. And Matt and his team have been doing this for 10 years. In fact, Matt is here with us today. We're tripling down on the French factor. And see, I've got my jacket here. I think I even have a French shirt. And I actually have Matt with me. Now the graphic has a lot in it. 1,400, over 1,400 companies in it. There's 3 companion blogs that come with the landscape. And so it could be a little bit overwhelming, but that's why we're here. We're going to kind of break down and simplify all of that so you can go from mad to glad before the end of our conversation here. Before we do that, like I always do every week, I want to make sure that I let you know about people you need to know about and you need to follow. The first one is Bala, VP of Enterprise Data Platform at PayPal. He and I were on a great panel this week, talked about the evolution, how he modernized from on-prem to the cloud and gained performance security. Great person to follow. His colleague, Jean-Georges, another Frenchman in data, who recently published a blog on the data mesh at PayPal, is someone you should follow as well. They both have actually published the insights of their migration and their work on the PayPal Tech blog. So really want to invite you to follow them. And then finally, Greg from Mondelez on Friday, he and I were on this great presentation to talk about how machine learning helped him with data quality and improve sales. He's been at Mondelez for 10 years in data architecture, so knows a lot about his stuff. You need to make sure you follow him. Now, it's time for us to get into this mad deal. So let me see if I can bring Matt here. Can you see me, Matt?
I can. Hi, how are you?
All right. I'm good. Well, you're in New York. I'm in San Francisco. So thanks for taking time. I know you don't have glasses, but I have them for you here. So next time you and I are together, I'll make sure to give you a pair of those. In this landscape, you're bringing 10 years of experience, right? When you started in 2012, there were 139 companies, and now you have 1,416 companies. So more than 10x in 11 years. So tell us a little bit, what's the deal with the landscape here? What's happening in the space, and what's kind of changed over the last 10 years?
Having over 1,400 logos comes with the territories, was covering one of the most exciting and explosive areas of technology. So I've been passionate about the world of AI, machine learning, and data pretty much my entire career in tech. And when we started this in 2012, just as an exercise mostly for us, there were already actually a number of companies. I remember thinking, wow, well, that's actually pretty crowded. And then fast forward, to today, and it's been absolutely amazing and explosive ecosystem to cover. So there's all the trends, right? There's the explosion of data infrastructure, what people used to call big data, which has had its own evolution, and then separately but very relatedly, the whole explosion of machine learning and AI, and the core technology that enables machine learning and AI in the enterprise and elsewhere that just keeps on growing. So we have over 400 companies. We could easily have twice as many.
Yeah. And I remember when you started this, I had a startup in the space, and I was really proud of finding myself in one of the boxes. Now, this year, a few things happened. One, the tool is interactive, so you can actually click, see the name of the company, how much funding they have. I think this is funding at the time of publication, right? It's not updated real time if they raise.
Yeah, it will. That's our first that first version of the interactive product. But in particular, we will add a search functionality and a filtering functionality by certain criteria as we go. But it's funny because we VCs and we launched this as a website, and it's like, wow, well, we're shipping kind of software, kind of an app, and it's actually it's actually hard. So maybe I should just go back to pontificate on boards, which is what I do best.
No, I'm really thankful you did the interactive tool, but you also wrote 3 companion blogs that really give us a good sense of how much depth there is, because I think people might not understand that there's a lot of work. I mean, you and I talked last weekend about the amount of work you're putting into this, and you got 2 companion blogs I'd like to talk about. The first one, you have 3 companion blogs, but I think today we'll have time to talk about 2. The first one is what's going on the funding side, the public market side, and the private. I'll just kind of give you what I saw. You talked about the IPO window. is shutting, and with not clear visibility of it, when does it reopen? The IPO volume sank 78% in 2022. If you take the index of companies you looked at, they pulled back 51% versus 19% for the S&P 500. But you also know that there's companies like MariaDB that are less worth now than the money they've actually raised. And you also talked about the great VC pullback. So what's going on here? Is there reason to worry, or in fact, it's just a reason to kind of test the market and our product market fit and come out of this, in fact, stronger?
Yeah, look, all of the above. We're coming from at least 2 to 3 years of explosive funding activity in data infrastructure. So the Snowflake IPO is very much the watershed moment when a lot of people, both founders and very much VCs, realized that, oh, well, actually, this whole thing is becoming very real. And that was, the explosion of the ecosystem around the data warehouse, which, as we know, became the modern data stack. So all of this got very exciting, and a bunch of companies were started and then funded again, and then funded again and again. So fast forward to today, we obviously have a very crowded ecosystem, especially in data infrastructure. If there's one thing that the mad landscape shows, it's that there are tons and tons of companies in tons and tons of categories. And all of this was fun and exciting. And look, there's a lot of very smart founder out there. There's a lot of great product out there, but a lot of those companies are very young. So they are sitting on some amount of cash that they raised, but I would guess that the vast majority of those companies are somewhere below 5 million in ARR, which is there's nothing wrong with that, but you got to start somewhere. But in the grand scheme of things, that's very early. So, what do you do when you're in a category and there's like another, 5, 6, maybe 10 companies that are also have good founders and good backers and have also raised cash and also are below 5 million ARR, and the VC market has dried up, and customers are likely to be much more, picky and choosy and maybe a little worried about working with a young startup. So this convergence of like all the things make things pretty tough. And again, look, I'm speaking as somebody who's like deeply passionate about this ecosystem and who has many, many friends, in addition to the companies I've invested in. So I certainly have a dog in this fight. But I think the sad reality is that for a number of companies, it's just not going to work out, right? So, look, some companies will succeed and emerge stronger than ever with better discipline, responsible growth, all the thing. They'll go through the transition. They will be able to raise more money, and they will emerge as like the category leader. A lot of other companies are going to have to either get picked up or merge with one another. So there's certainly going to be consolidation at one point or another. It's not going to be the kind of consolidation that VCs and founders hope for. It's like no super large acquisition. Maybe there'll be some, but like most likely not. And then there'll be a third category of company that will simply go out of business, right? They will either not be able to raise a round or even a down round, or they will just not be able to find a home. And look, I don't like that part at all, but that's part of the natural evolution and sort of Darwinian evolution of startups.
Yeah, there's also, I think, another good momentum that you're talking about is despite the fact that there's the great VC pullback where, I think you said startup raised $238 billion in 2022, which is a drop of 31% compared to the year before. There are startups that were on a later stage that actually had raised before this, right? You think about Vidaiku raising 200 million at a 3.7 valuation, Elation, 123 million at a 1.7, DBT Labs, Starburst, Dremio. So there was enough raising before this, and the market is indicating to us that the category is growing anyway, right? You point to McKinsey and Company showing research, 63% of companies saying they'll increase their investment in AI. And we know certainly from a research done in VentureBeat that 70% of data leaders say they're going to increase their data management investment. So it's not all gloomy. There's going to be correction. And there's also going to be tech trends, which I'd love to talk about with you. And you highlight that in two different companion blogs. The first one, which I thought was interesting, is there is no Hadoop box. And so is Hadoop dead?
Look, even in 2021, we were debating whether to keep it in 2021 being the most recent version of the MAD, which was at the end of 2021. Look, I think Hadoop played a super important role in the ecosystem. I think the existing footprint of Hadoop is much larger than one would think, and I'm thinking about like Hadoop, Hive, and like all the related products. Having said that, I think as an industry, we've all moved on. So yes, there will be inertia around the footprint of Hadoop, but I think sadly our friend the elephant is no longer finding little friends to play with.
Is no longer in the room, and that pains me for having to start a company a few years ago. The elephant is no longer in the room. Now, you'll notice that when you look at the research, there's also a similar debate around semantic layer and the metric store. But I like the way you're kind of describing. There's going to be consolidation, but also categories that are going to converge and kind of merge, converge and fold, right? So you talk to the category of ETL and reverse ETL coming together, data quality and observability coming together, OLTP, OLAP coming together, something referred to often your transactional analytical or HTAP coming together. You talked about data catalog and governance coming together, and MLOps coming under AI platform. There's one thing that I thought was particularly interesting is your perspective on the modern data stack. And I think you call it like the modern data stack is now under pressure. Tell me more about that. Like, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it's a question of the times changing. So if you think of the modern data stack as largely an assembly line, which involves a bunch of different vendors, cloud vendors that, both from a marketing standpoint, but more importantly, from a functionality standpoint, effectively decided to work together to offer a suite of solutions to customers. I think all of this was and continues to be very interesting. And again, the quality of the different companies involved in the modern data stack is very high. At the same time, we are now in a world of cost control. We are now in a world where the CFO is going to scrutinize every dollar that is spent on data technologies. And the modern data stack, because it's different vendors that all of which need a margin and need to increase their revenue, is pretty expensive. If you think of the additional cost of stitching things together internally or through a consultant, that is pretty expensive. And then it's pretty complicated, right? You have different moving parts from a technology standpoint. You also have different moving parts from a contractual standpoint, different legal departments you need to work with, and so on and so forth. So again, in a world where all of this is going to be scrutinized, I think this becomes suddenly something that is less, let's say, obvious than it was in the last couple of years. And look, I think the central tenet, which is not just a modern data stack, but like the general approach to data over the last 10 years, which has been, hey, let's just like keep all the data we have. Not worry about it, just like throw it in a big bucket, which over the years was like Hadoop, and then Snowflake, then Databricks, and maybe just S3. I think that central tenet is also starting to get under pressure because it turns out it's pretty expensive. And by the way, you may not use all of it. In fact, you may use very little of it. So I think people are starting to reconsider all of this. So I mean, it's going to be a certain amount of pressure over the next few years.
Yeah, and you and I last weekend talked about DuckDB and other trends like Omni and Malloy and other technologies that are emerging. So certainly it's not just under pressure only, but it's also there's new considerations that come into the stack that will require data leaders to think about it. There's a lot in what you work. So I want to make sure I also point to the fact that you talk about data mesh, data products, the CDP, data contracts. So there's certainly a lot. I noticed two things you didn't talk about, which is
all the buzzwords.
All the buzzwords. Industry clouds and data clean rooms. I don't think you touched much on that. Is it just not something you see much of, or?
No, that's because I talked about it last year, and forget if I ended up writing it or not, but like I meant to write that all the trends from the last couple of years are still largely still around. So last year I talked about data sharing and also talked about real time, and both of those things are super important. And certainly a big effort that Snowflake has been focused on. And then the convergence of like real time and batch, I think is really interesting. It's actually it's a good point. Like at some point, there's only so much I can write in this already, very painfully long writing. But if you look at the top right box in the infrastructure category, which is on the left side, which is the streaming part, that box just got very full as well. And if you add on top of it the real-time databases box, which is sort of related, that category of like real-time streaming is getting very active as well. Data sharing, real time, like all the things, still very much happening.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I definitely see a lot of development for that. So now these CarCasts, I try to keep them within 10 minutes. I'm pretty sure, I can look at the clock, but I'm pretty sure that we have definitely passed that. And we're doing this in English. So can you imagine if we did this in French, we'd probably be talking for 45 minutes. I want to close on at least 3 things that everyone should do. As you can see here, Matt and his team have poured a lot of time, a lot of research on this. So there's a lot of depth. So do take the time, check out the landscape, download it, print it, make sure you use the interactive map. Don't stop there and just get a cup of coffee or tea or water and read those companion blogs. I think at least I got a lot of satisfaction reading them. If you're a vendor, do not reach out to Matt or I to use it as an opportunity to market your company. That's not why we're doing this. Do connect with both of us, though, so you can engage with us directly on LinkedIn. And if you don't have time to take notes of what we talked about today, I'm going to publish it in my blog and throughout my LinkedIn post this week. I'm going to do a breakdown of each of the blogs so it can simplify it for you. So I hope you got a ton of value out of this conversation. And Matt, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I hope you enjoy the rest of the weekend. And then more importantly, you have a powerful week. Talk to you soon.